many of you know about what I'm going to discuss with you today. I think many of you have had a heads up on it, and I appreciate everybody just sort of keeping this to their vest and allowing us to sort of address it in one foul swoop here. But after today's game, we will depart for Toronto. And as many of you know, you must be vaccinated to go to Canada. And we do have a few players that are not. So Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and Austin Romine will not be making the trip. These players will be placed on the restricted list and activated prior to our Washington series at the end of the week. We'll replace them with Ivan Herrera, Connor Capel, and Corey Spangenberg. And then obviously we'll make the corresponding roster moves. We also have one player that has a passport, a Cuban passport that has expired, and we were not able to get it renewed, and that is Mr. Oviedo. We also have a list of injuries that I thought I would just give you guys a quick update on. Obviously, everybody that watched the game last night saw Steven Matz go down. He currently had an MRI this morning. We have not had the results read to us yet. So if there's going to be any corresponding move with him prior to today's game, we will keep you posted. But I'm not going to guess what that outcome is going to look like quite yet. And then Harrison Bader, as all of you know, participated in a Memphis game Friday night. After the game, he said he still felt some discomfort, and so he will seek a second opinion sometime early this week. And then Dakota Hudson will make the start in Memphis today. Quick update on Mr. Verhagen. He will begin his throwing program Monday. Mr. Yepez took some swings yesterday in the cage, and still felt some pain or soreness. So, we're going to be patient with him. And then Mr. Flaherty, I have a call with his group later today to really get a timeline on when we should expect him to start rejoining the club with his rehab. So that's a mouthful, but certainly take some questions.
Well, what's the organization's stance on Goldschmidt and Arenado, your team leaders, two of your team leaders, not getting vaccinated?
Well, I think regardless of what you think of the word stance, I think it's a personal decision. I think over the last couple of years, we've all been dealing with the pandemic. Everybody's had to make their own decisions on how they participate with some of the rules that were put in place, whether that was, wearing masks to not wearing masks to getting the vaccination versus not. I guess the one sort of positive here is it's only 2 games. And, from that standpoint, life will find a way of going on. And, I don't think it's in anybody's best interest to try to pass judgment or try to make this more than what it is. They're not available, and we're going to have to go play the game.
Oh, so much of being a part of a team is sacrificing for the good of the group. Were there conversations about reasons to do this, and how long had you known that this was going to be an issue?
Well, I've known ever since the schedule came out. So, there was some hope maybe those rules would change, but they didn't. And in terms of sacrificing for the team, I think, these are all personal decisions. And for anybody that pays attention to the news or what's happening in our country, a lot of these issues can be quite polarizing. And what I'm hoping to do is avoid that polarization with our club or inside the clubhouse, because, look, we all have strong opinions on what we think the right answer should be. But, I think we also all understand that it's hard to convince people to do something that they're not comfortable doing.
Thank you.
Mo, you had a player last year who opted not to get vaccinated at the start of the season, who worked with your medical staff, who then got vaccinated later in the season. Was that process, is that not repeatable with the successes that you had with Dr. Mahaffey and Tyler O'Neill last year? Was that encouraging, and is it discouraging that it didn't work out this time?
I think trying to treat everything as like they're apples to apples isn't fair. Mr. O'Neill, in his case, he's actually Canadian. And I think he realized if he wanted to go home, he needed to be vaccinated. So obviously his motivation was a little bit different than perhaps others. So, I don't think it's not that, we don't try to sell. It's not that we don't try to promote the vaccination, but again, it comes down to individuals' decision. And I think, each person will have their own reason for it. And I think, the easiest way for us to handle this is we have to respect that and just know that we have to play 2 games in Toronto.
John, you had to be vaccinated 2 weeks before leaving. Did you have any players change their mind and maybe get vaccinated before the 2-week cutoff period?
We did not.
Hey, Mo, can you describe the situation with Oviedo in a little more detail? You mentioned it because he has a Cuban passport that had expired. Is there a policy reason? Was there some challenge in getting a visa with his passport or anything like that?
I know we were working on it for a while, and unfortunately, we just did not get a renewed one in time. And we don't want to take any chances of him trying to cross the border, try to get in, and then also perhaps trying to get back into the country. So, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. I see a lot of hands, so I think we just start like calling on people, so it's not so like random. So I'm just going to start with Rob Raines and then work my way across.
Will you be able to replace Oviedo with somebody too for these 2 games then? You mentioned the 3 guys coming up to replace
it is an option, but it's not the same replacement rules as if you're using the COVID rule. So we're not sure if we're going to do that yet, because then it would restart someone else's clock, and I'm not sure we want to do that in terms of the 15-day. So for being optioned. So that's still to be determined.
And are you taking a separate taxi squad too with you on this trip?
You'll see additional faces today at the ballpark if you're there, but we won't take any more. Look, this was challenging between vaccinations, visa requirements, and passport requirements. Even though we had plenty of time to plan, we still hit some roadblocks.
Thank you.
Katie?
Hello, good morning. While understanding it's a personal decision for both Goldschmidt and Arenado, these are guys that have been publicly applauded for their leadership, both in St. Louis and across the league. How does a clubhouse handle 2 of their esteemed leaders not being able to play with them for 2 games in Toronto?
I don't know that answer. I guess time will tell. It has not been something that we've been talking a lot about internally downstairs. I think, most people respect what they do on the field and what they do in the clubhouse. And my assumption or my guess would be that even though, some people may view this as disappointing, I still think they're going to have a lot of political capital in the clubhouse and still be respected.
Thanks.
Ben? Fred?
Hey, Mo, thanks for doing this. You mentioned the rules. You thought that maybe the rules could change, and rules have been changing kind of all over the place. What have the discussions been like among teams, among the league, about this being a storyline for every team? And was there a real thought that maybe something could shift during the All-Star break?
I think we were just speculating on what the rules might be. But for example, when the season started, you had to, when you were leaving Canada, coming back in the United States, you had to show like a negative COVID test. That rule no longer exists. And so you did see some softening or changes in the rules. And so, at one point we thought, well, maybe the Canadian law or rules for getting into the country might change. It didn't. That was not the bet we were playing, though, Ben. Just to be clear, we were, hopeful we could get everybody vaccinated and go up and play. But we didn't, and so there'll be a few players not on this trip. Hockman?
Hey, Hey, Mo, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. I know this is delicate, so I preface my question by bringing that up. As the president of baseball operations, I just curious your take on a player such as Arenado, who seemingly does everything above and beyond. Ali Marmol told us that there were days Marmol wanted to sit him out and for a rest. He's like, no, I gotta play. He sits out the All-Star game in his hometown to rest, to prepare for the regular season, yet he is making a decision to not play in 2 games that could determine the division or the playoffs.
What are you looking for there? I don't like.
Well, I guess just some your for lack of a better word, your thoughts, your emotions. Does it add up to you? Is it frustrating? Is it bizarre that somebody would be so dedicated in one realm but not in the other? I know it's delicate.
I look, I can't get into someone's mind on how they think, but I think we could all agree that over the last 2 years, there's been, a lot of things written about vaccinations. A lot of people have come out being against them. And I think it's like, in a lot of ways, like what people digest and see. There's a lot of people that are, looking at me right now, nodding their heads. Well, they're probably vaccinated, and they don't understand when other people aren't. But we are in a I think a society or a country right now where we have a lot of divisions, and I think that really sort of encroaches on perhaps on how some people think at times, and it's really difficult, I think, for someone like myself to condemn or be upset of how someone's thinking about something. Clearly in my seat, you'd like to run out your best club every day. But as all of you know, there's days we can't for various reasons. And this 2-game set in Toronto becomes no different. And, I think from like our perspective, meaning the Cardinals and the coaches, like we understand that these are tough decisions. And, what we don't want to do is have this become some sort of first step in fracturing what a positive clubhouse we have. And so, my hope is that we get through these 2 days in Toronto. I mean, obviously we got to get through today first. But my hope is that we can do that and then move on. But, someone asked earlier, like, could we have convinced them to do this? I don't think it was really something like, we were pounding the table for. We sort of talked about it, but it wasn't something that I thought anyone was going to change their minds.
Thanks for your quotes. I appreciate it.
Derek?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I'm joining you here from I don't know, some airport somewhere.
Yep.
Hey, I wonder if you made any free agent or roster decisions based on vaccination status. And in that same vein, if you could describe how these COVID policies, whether Toronto's or elsewhere's, have in fact, it could impact the competitive nature of this season.
It is okay. A couple thoughts. One is in terms of when we were thinking about acquiring players and that sort of thing. At the time, we weren't like using that because, again, we thought there could be changes. We knew we only had 2 games in Toronto. So when you think about last offseason, there wasn't like, a major impact from COVID restrictions that we thought we would be affected by. In terms of the competitive balance question, it is sort of interesting, right? Because when you look at teams that have to go up there, they're not necessarily all going up at 100%. But the more we kind of dug on that, the more you realize like your team rarely is 100%. Like maybe the most successful teams have the least amount of injuries, but when you think about like 162, there's always sort of these ebb and flows of when you're full throttle versus when you're in a lull because of internal injuries or players not available. And so the more we thought about it, the more we were thinking like it's just part of a season. Now, obviously, if you play in the American League East, you could argue that might be a little bit more impactful because you're having to go up there more often. whereas for us, it was 2 games.
That being said, 2 games could be the difference in your division, could be the difference in your wild card. I mean, you know how close this is. You've been around for years. You know how close it gets in October.
No, I understand. All games matter. I mean, I get that, but for example, like there was a night a couple weeks ago where we didn't have our closer available, and it's kind of similar. You like to be able to have your best available all the time, but that just doesn't happen. You look at somebody like Jack Flaherty, right? Like, we were hopeful he would have been making much more starts, but unfortunately he's not. And so like you adjust and you hope that you can withstand those types of things. And yeah, I mean, I agree. There's 2 games in Toronto. They're definitely as important as today's game in Cincinnati. Will our lineup look a little different in Toronto? Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for calling on me.
John?
Mo, we won't get to talk to Nolan or Goldschmidt until after the game today, but did they express any remorse over this or strong stance or reasoning for their decision?
I think I'll allow you guys to speak with them. I did, talk with Nolan recently about this, and he noted at the time of this period, he was hoping to begin a family with his wife. And for him, it was, a personal decision, and again, we honor that, and but that was what he was thinking. And with regard to Goldie, I checked in on him, but never had a lengthy discussion on it. Spoke with him a year and a half ago about it, and so of course I understood what he was thinking then. And then I never had any discussion with Mr. Rowland.
One other question, could we ask you about where Yadi, any updates on Yadi, where his rehab will begin, or state of mind with him?
I didn't skip over him on purpose. I actually am just planning on talking with him either later tonight or tomorrow. And so hopefully have a little bit better plan for public consumption on exactly where he is and what we can expect from him this week.
Thank you.
Ben?
Hey, I was talking to a player the other week, and they had said that they had the Johnson & Johnson, I guess the first one, but nothing since. I'm just curious, is the way to say this, the guys who are not going are not vaccinated, or the guys who are not going don't meet the updated requirements, or is it a combination of both?
My understanding, and hope I'm not wrong here, but if you got the J&J, that counts as vaccinated in the eyes of Canada.
Got it. Thank you.
John Denton again?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to lower it. But
I see
Hey,
no
Mo.
hand. Okay.
Hey, Mo, just to follow up on what you just said there, that is correct. That going through the Arrive Canada thing, that's what it asked for. It just asked for J&J.
Okay, because that would be disappointing if all of a sudden that changed. Be a massive scramble down here.
it just has to be before the 2-week cutoff, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't see any more hands. I again, thank you for your patience. Sorry about the technical problems, and catch up soon.
Thank you.